Hi guys, I just wanted to go through an image that I took the other day, and I wanted to go from the raw file right through to the finished product. So just thought that I would show you my complete workflow, because people have asked that sometimes. I'm just doing little tutorial videos and nothing about the complete workflow. So let's get into it. This is a raw image opened up in Camera Raw in Photoshop. I've been using that of late. So what I would do is I would look at this file, look at my histogram. I realize I've got everything's contained in there. I don't seem to have anything blown out and nothing too badly crushed. So looking at my shadows and stuff first, I'm going to bring the shadow slider up a little bit, just see if I can get a bit more detail in there, which I can quite nicely. Also going to look at my highlights and just recover some of that going on there in the sky over here. Just a smidgen. I love using dehaze. Been using a lot of that. It does darken things down a bit, so we're just going to give that a little bit of a tickle with the exposure as well, just to bring it back, to lighten that up a little bit. And I would also think about white balance. I'm just going to go in. I'll just try auto. Don't like auto. Let's have a look at daylight. Daylight's slightly better, or I'll just go as shot. As shot is got a lot more magenta going on in there. But I want to show you another technique. If you do set your white balance wrong, eventually, if you open it up and you don't like the color that you've got, I'll show you how we can change that using the divide blend mode, which is kind of cool. So I'm happy with that. First I should just look to see if it's sharp or not. Command Option 0. This was shot on the Leica SL2, and I'm pretty happy with the sharpness. Sometimes I like to look at that weird cloud there. That's quite strange, isn't it? I might have to clone that out. And that's actually, what is that? UFO. Anyway, sometimes I'll go in to 200% and just look to see if there's any noise. There is nothing really noticeable, but if there was, I would go into my little sharpening tool there and just bring the luminance up a little bit, which will smooth it out. Obviously it reduces the sharpness a smidgen and detail as well, but this is all pretty good. Shot at ISO 50. This is on the 16-35mm Leica lens, beautiful lens, and I don't think there's any color noise going on, so I'm just going to reduce that back to 0. Looking at my sharpening there, I'm going to take it up to 80, and I'm going to drop the radius back to 0.5. It's generally what I like to do. If we go out, if I want to mask off some of the areas where I don't want any sharpening, I can just hold down the Option or Alt key, click on masking, and bring that along, and all I want to do is really sharpen this sort of the foreground stuff, not really the sky. So we'll just add a bit of masking there, which should help a little bit. Now, I mean, you can go further with this. If I wanted to go in, I would go add a gradient there, just darken that sky down a little bit. You can see a nice big dust spot in there. I'll probably add a little gradient there, and I can quite possibly add another selective layer there to just lighten up the foreground, but I'd rather do that in Photoshop. I'm much happier doing it in Photoshop. So right now I've got the sharpening where I want. Everything's pretty good. Happy with the colors, and I am just going to let's have a look. I might add a little bit of clarity, not too much, smidgen of clarity, and let's have a look at the vibrance. Too much, too little. Vibrance is pretty good where it was. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm exporting as a 16-bit file, which is here, 16 bits per channel, and I haven't uploaded my DCAM 3 color space profile yet, so I'm still just exporting it as Pro Photo, and I'm going to make sure that it's the default size. I don't want it to go up or down. At 240 ppi, and click OK. Then open image. And there we have it. It's the start. Hit F on the keyboard to give you a full screen view. Now, looking at that, first thing I always do is I just go straight to my levels adjustment layer and just have a look at my histogram. and I can see that it's pretty good, but we need to open up some foreground there, that it's a little bit dark in the foreground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a quick curves adjustment layer and change the blend mode down to screen. And sometimes I like to just pull this black point back a little bit. So let's have a look. It's before and after. Obviously it's a little bit harsh, so I'm going to brush that in. I'm going to hit Command or Control I to invert that layer mask to make it black. I'm going to B for brush. My right square bracket will make my brush bigger, and I'm going to paint with black, so white as my foreground color. So hit X on the keyboard, you can see toggles to white, and I'm going to just brush this through like so. It's a little bit strong. Then I'm going to hit the 3 on the keyboard to change the opacity down to 30% and just slowly bring that up a little bit brighter there, a little bit in the foreground, something like that. And I'm not too worried about spilling over into that sky a little bit. I don't want to get a hard edge, and you don't want any halos to appear or anything weird like that. So you just keep it a nice big soft brush. So if you turn that on and off, we can see, okay, straight up it's starting a little bit better. But I'm also thinking that possibly some of these areas might be looking a little bit weird. So if I hit X on the keyboard, paint with black now, I can just rub that back. Take opacity's on 30%. If I just give that a rub over there, looking at it before and after, no, I don't think it's too much. So go back to 1% and just put a little bit of detail back in that spot, something like that. Okay, now there's still things to be done. I'm not super duper happy with the color, and I'd probably work on the clarity a little bit as well. Also, I want to get a bit more of a dreamy feel. Let's flatten that down. Command Shift E or Control Shift E if you're on a PC. That bloody spot there is doing my head in, so that's gone. Now there's a couple other little clouds here that are not so great. I'll get rid of those. Where's that weird cloud down there? Look at that. I don't know what that is. There's another one there. It's like the weirdest little thin clouds. See you later, cloud. Take it down there. Got rid of that sucker. Looking much better. So just looking at the color now, there's definitely a like a bit of a purple cast to it, which is, you know, it's not too bad, but I think it could do with a looking a little bit more cyan maybe. So there's different ways to do this. So one way I would normally, well, I have done in the past, is I'll do a curve adjustment layer, hold down the Option or Alt key and clicking on the Auto button there, it'll come up with some options, and I'll just flick through these options and you can see that's gone from purple to kind of more cyany, which is more realistic. Also get to the top and then I can click on the snap neutral midtones, and that looks too muddy, don't like that one. Okay, no, not so good. So that, so far that one, sorry, this one here, no, yes, that one there was the best. It just takes a bit of that purpleness out. So if I click OK and we just click on the eye, you can see before and after. So that looks better, but I've got another way of doing it, which I've just learnt, which is kind of cool. So what we do is we hit I on the keyboard, and that'll bring up your eyedropper tool. If you don't have that, you got the color sampler, eyedropper. So Shift I will just toggle between those two. And what you want to do is you want to find an area that you consider to be, should be, or is white. So I'm going to go for a light whitey area down here. I'll click on that, and that will set that color as my foreground color. You'll see it just there. Then I'm going to go down to solid color and add that as a solid color adjustment layer. Click OK, and then I'm going to change the blend mode from normal down to divide. And if I turn that eye on and off, you can see there goes that. It also adds a little bit extra light, so the brightness is a bit too hot. You can see it's blowing out these areas here. So if I double click back on this little icon and then go to in brightness there, if I just bring this up or down, this will adjust it, and I just want to go back up to the top. Click OK, and now it's just affecting the color, not the luminance. So that's another way, which is kind of a cool way of working out getting your whites to be more white. So purple, white, purple, white. I quite like the sky the way it was, so I'm going to click on that layer mask, G for gradient, and I'm just going to draw wrong way. I always get it the wrong way. I'm going to start at the top there, click and drag down to somewhere like that, and let go. And that way, so the bulk of it has changed, but it's retaining some of it at the top there. I might just go a little bit further down. Shift click, starting about here somewhere, just down to there. And that's giving us a graduated line. Let's just go a little bit further. And you can get away with something like that. Just opening that foreground up. It's a little bit dodgy, so let's try it a bit differently. And you can see there, that's the gradient that we've drawn. Okay, so that should be Option or Alt click on the layer mask there. So that's not too bad. I think that sky's a little bit too purple still. I can click on the mask. So you don't double click, just click on the mask. And if you go to your properties, you can then reduce the density of that mask, and that will reduce the effect. So I'm just going to find somewhere where I'm happy with that, which was revealing that layer a bit more, that effect of that layer. So not so purple. Let's try that. And you can see now, if I click on Option, click on the mask, how we've made that. It's not black anymore, it's grey, so it's letting more of that effect through. So that's looking pretty good. Alright, I always flatten stuff as I go. I don't like lots of layers, especially when the files start to get big. So I'm going to Command Shift E and flatten it down. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on a bit of just adding a little bit of oomph, a bit of contrast, a bit of kind of cool stuff. I haven't done this for ages. It's something I've enjoyed in the past, but I've just sort of remembered to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command J or Control J to duplicate the background layer, and I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to soft light. Then I'm going to go up to Filter, to Blur and Gaussian Blur, and add just an area, something like that, which kind of gives it a bit of a weird kind of softness. You can see how it does that. It's kind of a more dreamy like effect. Click OK. But obviously doing a soft light blend mode, it gets quite contrasty. So if I do before and after, you can see it's adding the contrast, but it's adding too much to the darker end, the shadows. So if I double click on that little bar there, layer 1, I can then go in, Option click on this little slider, split it in two, set this one to around 100, 199, good enough, and this one to around 50. There you go. Let's make it 100 just because we should. And then if I just do the preview on and off, you can see how that really opens up the shadows. Click OK. So there we go. That's given it a kind of a more gritty sort of soft light, sort of not gritty. What's the word? Contrasty, but kind of nice. And then I'm gonna drop the opacity back because it's a little bit strong. So it's at 50%. So before and after. So I'm kind of happy with that. And I always like to look at the images in a frame. So I always go in Command Option C and just add a like a 4" by 4" size canvas and make sure they tick relative. Click OK, and then I hit F on the keyboard and I sit back and I look at it and wonder whether it's worthy or not. It's okay. I don't think I am overly excited by it, but it's a starting point. Let's flatten that. Command Shift E and think about it. I'm thinking the colors are a bit meh, so I love to go into my color lookups and check here and go through. I've got a whole heap of LUTs, as you can see there. You can create your own. I've got a whole lot of these from 3D LUT Creator, so I just kind of find ones that I like. Teal and orange is always one of my favorites. Let's go to teal and orange, and you can see it gets rid of all that purple, but it's still too strong. So what I like to do is I'll just drop the opacity back on that. Something along those lines is good. It's taken a lot of that purple out of the sky and the water, and then I'll duplicate that, change the blend mode of the top one to screen, and then pull the opacity back on that, and all of a sudden you get a lot more light going on. If you think it's too much, it needs a little bit more purple back in there, you can go back to the layer underneath and just pull that opacity back a little bit more until you get something that you like. So those two layers, if I option click on the eye and the background layer there, you can see how that's created a nicer look. Something like that. And just looking through there, the image is pretty sharp throughout. I would normally get rid of that stick, probably clone that out, and yeah, everything else is looking pretty good. I think I've only got one dust spot on my camera so far, or maybe that's dust spot too. That's quite possibly a dust spot. Okay, and at that point I might think, well, I'm done, but I still don't like it. This is live, so I do this all the time. I end up with these images I don't particularly care for. Now I have done one of these already, a different angle, and I think it's a much better one. So let's have a look at that, see if I can find it for you. It is in here. This is the one I did, and it's a much nicer image, but basically using the same techniques. So I've got the color right using that divide blend mode idea, and then use the duplicate layer blended on soft light, and then with that layer being blurred to give it that kind of a dreamier sort of look. And this one's come up nice, and I think it's probably something to do with the angle as well. It's a much better angle. The water looks better. It's got that nice movement, and the sky is much nicer as well. In this one I actually used two different skies, so that's probably why it worked better. Yes, look at that. That's the dog. Maybe I should get rid of those layers. No, I don't. Keep them. But this one needs to come back a bit. Something like that. Still a dog. You just, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But the main thing is just experiment, have fun, and if it's not working, delete and start again. Anyway, I hope this has given you some ideas, but it's also not confusing you, but it's making you realize that not everything's going to work perfectly. Okay guys, talk soon.